All right, so today we're diving deep into large language models, LLMs. Those
Yeah.
AI tools like ChatGPT and Bard that have been making so much noise.
Yeah, but we're not going to focus on how to actually use them. What we're really going to examine is their impact on the entire world of security and privacy.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So we've got some excerpts here from a research survey paper called A Survey on Large Language Model, LLM, Security and Privacy, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Catchy title.
It really is. And this paper analyzes a ton of recent research, a huge amount.
So let's break it down.
Okay, sounds good.
What stood out to you as the biggest takeaways?
Well, the paper talks about, how LLMs are actually being used to make code more secure.
Really?
Yeah. And I found that pretty surprising, to be honest.
Yeah, I was expecting to hear all about how they can be exploited for malicious purposes.
Well, we'll get to that, but first let's focus on the good stuff.
All right, let's hear it.
So, what's fascinating here is that it's not just about catching bugs after the fact. Researchers are actually using LLMs to write more secure code from the get-go.
Wow, so they're like proactive security guards for your code.
That's a good way to put it. And they're even finding that LLM-based code analysis tools, they can sometimes outperform the leading commercial
I'm
tools.
kidding.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a technique called fuzzing. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Vaguely, it rings a bell.
Basically, it involves, bombarding a program with a ton of different inputs just to see if it breaks.
Oh,
And LLMs are being used to generate much more sophisticated fuzzing inputs. So this leads to the discovery of more vulnerabilities before they even hit the real world.
So it's like a supercharged stress test for your code, making sure it can handle anything thrown at it.
Exactly. And this approach is really good at finding those hidden weaknesses that traditional methods might miss.
That's awesome. So LLMs are not just good at writing secure code, they're also good at testing it.
Right. Now, code is one thing, but what about securing actual data? Does the research cover that too?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, good. This is where things get even more interesting.
All right, I'm all ears.
So LLMs are showing a lot of promise when it comes to several key areas of data security. For example, ensuring data integrity.
You mean making sure the data isn't tampered with?
Exactly. And LLMs are also being explored for protecting data reliability, confidentiality, and even traceability.
Traceability, huh?
Yeah, basically being able to track where data goes and who has accessed it.
That's pretty crucial in today's world where, data breaches are becoming more and more common.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. LLMs can analyze system logs for any anomalies.
Oh, like a digital detective.
That's a great way to put it. They sift through mountains of data, constantly monitoring your systems.
Wow. So they're not just passively protecting data, they're actively hunting for threats.
Right. And then there's another interesting application, creating more realistic honeypots.
Honeypots. Okay, I've heard of those.
Yeah.
They're basically traps, right? To lure in attackers.
Yeah, that's right.
But I never really thought about using AI to make them more sophisticated.
Well, with LLMs, you can actually create honeypots that are incredibly convincing, so it makes it much harder for attackers to tell the difference between a trap and a real target.
That's a clever use of AI. So far, LLMs are sounding like the superheroes of the digital world.
Well, I don't know about superheroes, but they definitely have a lot of potential. However, there is another side to this story.
Right. The bad and the ugly, the ways these LLMs can be exploited for um, malicious purposes.
Exactly. And the paper we're looking at actually categorizes these LLM-powered attacks into 5 different levels: hardware, OS, software, network, and user.
5 levels, huh? That's pretty comprehensive.
It is. And what's really interesting is that, the majority of research on these LLM attacks focuses on the user level.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, LLMs are so good at, understanding and generating human-like text.
Exactly. And this is where we see LLMs being used for things like social engineering, phishing, and even generating misinformation that can be even harder to detect than human-crafted content.
So it's not just about bad actors using LLMs as tools. It's about these models being tricked into doing bad things themselves.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so now we're getting to the ugly side of LLMs.
Yeah.
The vulnerabilities that exist within the models themselves.
We are, and that's what we'll be diving into
It
next.
sounds a little ominous.
A little bit, but it's important to understand these vulnerabilities so we can better protect ourselves and our data.
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Let's do it. So let's talk about those vulnerabilities within the models themselves.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay. You mentioned data poisoning earlier.
Right, where
Yeah.
attackers sneak malicious data into the training set, to basically influence the LLM's output.
Exactly. It's like corrupting the AI's mind from the very beginning.
Pretty sneaky.
It is, because the LLM learns from the data it's given, right? So if that data is poisoned, well, then the LLM's responses, its actions, can be manipulated.
Okay, that's kind of disturbing. What else? Are there any other vulnerabilities we should be aware of?
Oh, yeah, there are a few.
Hit me with it.
Okay, so another one is called a backdoor attack.
Backdoor attack. What's that?
It's where essentially attackers plant like a hidden trigger in the LLM.
The hidden trigger, huh?
Yeah. So if that trigger is activated, then the LLM might start, behaving in ways that are unexpected and potentially harmful.
So it's like a sleeper agent, like embedded in the AI,
That's a great way to put it.
just waiting for the right moment to, to strike.
Exactly. And it really highlights how important it is to understand these vulnerabilities and to develop really robust defenses.
Okay, so speaking of defenses,
Mhm.
are there any? I mean, are we just sitting ducks here?
Well, there's a lot of research being done in this area, thankfully.
Okay.
One approach is what's called corpora cleaning.
Corporate cleaning. Hold on, what's a corporate exactly?
Oh, right. So in this context, a corpora is basically a massive collection of text and code
Okay.
that's used to train the LLM.
Got it.
So corpora cleaning is all about making sure that that training data is as free of bias and harmful content as possible.
So it's like giving the LLM like a digital detox.
Yeah, exactly. You want to make sure it's learning from good, clean data.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what else? What are some other techniques that researchers are working on?
Well, there's also instruction pre-processing.
Okay. What's that?
It's kind of like filtering out any potentially harmful prompts before they even reach the LLM.
Oh, okay. So it's like having a digital bouncer at the door,
Yeah.
keeping out the troublemakers.
Exactly.
I like it.
But it's important to remember that, this is a constant arms race. As researchers develop new defenses, attackers are always, looking for new ways to exploit LLMs.
Right, right. It's a cat and mouse game.
It really is.
Always.
Now, we've been talking a lot about these, attacks and vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
can be a bit overwhelming.
It is. But I think we've got a good foundation for, understanding the security implications of LLMs.
I think so, too.
Now, I'm really curious about something the paper mentioned, inference attacks.
Oh, yeah, inference attacks.
Yeah, they sound pretty sneaky.
They can be very subtle and sophisticated.
Okay, so break it down for me.
So imagine an attacker who's trying to, figure out your age
Yep.
or your location
Okay.
or even your income just based on the text that you fed into an LLM.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that's an attribute inference attack.
Wow. So even seemingly harmless information that could be used to, like, build a profile of me.
That's the concern, exactly. And, as LLMs become even more integrated into our lives, this kind of, privacy violation becomes more and more of a risk.
Okay, so what can we do to protect ourselves?
Mhm.
I mean, is it even possible to use these LLMs without, like, leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs?
Well, one strategy is to, be very careful about what information you share with LLMs. Think twice before you type anything sensitive into a chatbot.
Yeah, that's good advice for any online interaction, really.
It is, but researchers are also working on, making LLMs themselves more resistant to these types of attacks.
Okay.
One approach is to, minimize the amount of information that the LLM leaks, even unintentionally.
So it's like giving the LLM a digital cloak, like to make it harder for attackers to track us.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about reducing the LLM's attack surface when it comes to privacy.
That makes sense. So we've been talking about protecting, like, our own privacy.
Right.
But what about the LLM itself? I mean, can the actual model be, stolen, copied?
That's a great question. And it leads us to what are called extraction attacks.
Extraction attacks.
Yeah. There are a few different types, but one that, really stands out is a model theft attack.
Model theft attack?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's that?
This is where someone tries to, create a copy of the entire LLM just by studying its output.
Wow, so they're like reverse engineering the AI.
Exactly. They're trying to steal the secret sauce.
Interesting.
And then there's training data extraction.
Okay.
This is where an attacker tries to recover the original data that the LLM was trained on.
Okay.
And that could be, a huge privacy breach if that data includes any kind of, sensitive information.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like these extraction attacks, they're tough to defend against, right?
They are.
Because they often exploit, like, the normal ways that people interact with the LLM.
Exactly. It's like someone posing as a regular user, but secretly, they're trying to siphon off valuable information.
Right, right. Sneaky, sneaky.
So it's definitely a challenge. All this talk about attacks and vulnerabilities, it can make you a bit paranoid, can it?
A little bit, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, are there any LLMs out there that are considered, like, truly secure?
Well, secure is a relative term.
Oh, true.
There's no such thing as like, 100% secure system, whether it's AI or any other technology.
Right. But I guess what I'm wondering is, are there any LLMs that are specifically, designed with security in mind?
Yes, absolutely. There are some LLMs that are trained on data sets that have been, carefully curated to remove sensitive information or biased information.
Okay.
So it's like, starting with a clean slate,
Got it.
making sure the LLM is learning from the best possible sources.
Makes sense. And are there any other techniques being used to kind of, you know, build more secure LLMs?
Yeah. One interesting approach is called differential privacy.
Differential privacy. Okay, I haven't heard of that.
It's a bit technical,
Okay.
but essentially it adds like a carefully calibrated amount of noise to the LLM's output.
Noise?
Yeah. And what this does is it makes it harder for attackers to kind of distinguish between the responses of different users.
So it's like adding a layer of digital camouflage
Huh.
to the LLM's output
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
to protect the users.
Exactly. It's all about, making it harder for attackers to extract any kind of meaningful information from the LLM's responses.
I see. I see.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the benefits of LLMs and security to, the various types of attacks and vulnerabilities.
Yeah, my head's spinning a little bit.
It is a lot to take in. It's a complex landscape.
It is.
But one thing to keep in mind is that LLMs are still, relatively new.
Yeah.
The research into their security and privacy implications is ongoing, and this field is changing so rapidly.
So it's a space to, like, watch closely.
Definitely. Stay informed.
Definitely. And, all this talk about potential threats, it makes me wonder, what's being done to actually harness these LLMs for good in the cybersecurity world?
Right. It's a good point. We've been focusing a lot on on the risks.
Yeah.
But what about the possibilities? This paper does mention a few areas where more research is needed. Maybe we can dig into those.
Yeah, I'd like that.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so we were talking about areas where more research on LLMs and security is needed.
Right. I'm ready to dive back in.
Well, one that really stood out to me was this potential for model extraction attacks.
Yeah. Yeah, those where someone basically tries to, like, steal the entire LLM. It's
Exactly.
like stealing the AI's brain.
Yeah, it's like it'd be a huge coup for an attacker.
Right.
Giving them access to all that knowledge and capabilities.
All the secret sauce.
Exactly. And researchers are actively working on ways to protect against this kind of attack, but it's definitely a big concern.
It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
futuristic espionage.
Totally. Okay, so model extraction is one area that needs more attention. What else? What else is on the research agenda?
Another crucial area is this interplay between LLMs and, all of the existing security tools and techniques.
Right.
We need to figure out how to best integrate LLMs into our current security infrastructure.
So it's not about replacing everything we already have.
Mm-hmm.
It's about figuring out how LLMs can make what we have even better.
Exactly. LLMs are a powerful new tool, but they're not, a silver bullet.
Right.
We need to find ways to leverage their strengths, but also mitigate their weaknesses.
It's like adding a new tool to our cybersecurity toolbox, not throwing out the entire toolbox, right?
I like that analogy. And this integration is going to require a lot of collaboration.
Oh, yeah. Between who?
AI researchers, security professionals, and even policymakers.
Wow, that's a lot of moving parts.
It is. It's a multifaceted challenge for sure.
It is. But you know what? While we've been focusing on this, like, technical side of things,
Right?
I keep thinking about the potential societal impact of all of this.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when LLMs become even more powerful and ubiquitous?
That's a huge question. And as LLMs become more sophisticated, they're going to raise all sorts of ethical and legal questions
Yeah.
that we as a society need to really grapple with.
It's almost like we're entering a new era of technology, and we need to make sure that we're prepared for all the, the challenges and the opportunities that come with
We
it.
do. And this is a conversation that needs to happen now while these technologies are still relatively young.
Yeah.
We need to be proactive in shaping the future of LLMs and making sure that they're used responsibly and ethically.
I think that's a great point. Well said.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a mix of excitement and caution as we wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
Excitement about, The potential of LLMs to improve security, but also caution about the potential risks we've talked about.
Yeah, it's a healthy perspective to have.
For sure.
LLMs are incredibly powerful tools, but like any powerful tool, they can be used for good or for bad. It's up to us to make sure they're used in a way that benefits society as a whole.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to all of our listeners out there, stay curious, stay informed, and as always, stay safe out there in the digital world.
Mhm.